After 15 years of marriage, the wife asked her husband to describe her. The husband looked at her slowly and without blinking an eye, said, "A BCDEFGHIJK. "What does that mean?" she asked. "Adorable, beautiful, cute, delightful, elegant, fashionable, gorgeous and hot," he replied. Wife smiling asked, "So sweet of you, honey. What about IJK?" He replied, "I'm just kidding." A girl received a tea set for her second birthday, and it quickly became one of her favorite toys. While her mother was away caring for her sick aunt, the toddler loved bringing her father tiny cups of tea, which were really just water. While he was absorbed in the news on TV, he would sip each cup and shower her with enthusiastic compliments, making her beam with pride. When the mother returned home, her husband was eager to show her how his little princess had been taking care of him. As expected, the girl brought him another cup of tea, and he eagerly drank it, praising it once more. The mother watched him with a knowing smile and said, "Did it ever occur to you that the only place she can reach for water is the toilet?" Irende. A blonde husband and his brunette wife were happily married and eagerly awaiting the arrival of their first child. When the wife began having contractions, the husband quickly drove her to the hospital. He held her hand through the challenging labor, supporting her every step of the way. Finally, after a tough delivery, they were blessed with not one, but two little baby boys. The blonde husband looked at his wife, clearly upset, and asked, "Okay, so who's the other father?" 3 dots. One day, a little old lady answered a knock at her door and found a well-dressed young man holding a vacuum cleaner. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "If you could spare a few minutes, I'd love to demonstrate the latest high-powered vacuum cleaner." "Go away," the old lady replied. "I'm broke and can't afford anything." She started to close the door, but the young man was quick. He wedged his foot in the door and pushed it open. "Wait, don't rush to shut me out. You really should see my demonstration first." With that, he dramatically dumped a bucket of horse manure onto her carpet. "Now, if this vacuum doesn't pick up every last trace of this mess, I'll personally eat what's left." The old lady stepped back, eyeing the mess. "Well, let me grab you a fork then. They cut off my electricity this morning." Nanga, a police officer, pulls over a car cruising at just 20 miles per hour on the highway. Behind the wheel is a sweet elderly lady with 2 more old ladies in the back seat. The officer approaches the car and asks, "Why were you driving so slowly?" The driver replies proudly, "I was following the posted speed limit." She points to a sign further ahead. The officer chuckles. "That's not a speed limit sign, it's just the highway sign for Route 20. One of the backseat ladies gasps and exclaims, "We tried to tell you, Eugenia." Noticing their wide eyes and disheveled appearances, the cop raises an eyebrow. One of the ladies is clutching the door handle tightly. "Is everything okay?" the officer inquires. With a shaky voice, she replies, "We just came off of Interstate 190. Punch. 3 sisters were all getting married within a few months of each other. Their mom, a bit nervous, made them promise to send a postcard from their honeymoon with just a few words describing their first impressions of married life. A few days after the first wedding, a postcard arrived from Hawaii. It read simply, "Nescafe." Puzzled, Mom grabbed the Nescafe jar from the kitchen and read the label. "Good to the last drop." Mom blushed, but she was happy for her daughter. A week later, the second postcard arrived from the Maldives. It read, "Rothmans." Mom headed straight for her husband's pack of cigarettes and found the tagline, "King size, super strong." She blushed again, but she was thrilled. The third daughter flew off to New Zealand for her honeymoon. A week went by, nothing. 2 weeks, still nothing. A month later, a postcard finally arrived with shaky handwriting. It read simply, Air New Zealand. Mum took out her latest travel magazine, flipped through the pages fearing the worst, and finally found the ad for Air New Zealand. 10 times a day, 7 days a week, in all directions. A man calls his wife and says, "Honey, I've been invited to go fishing in China with my boss for a week. This could be my chance at that promotion, so can you pack enough clothes for the trip? Also, please get my fishing rod and tackle box ready. I'll swing by to pick everything up from the house. Oh, and don't forget to pack my new blue silk pajamas." The wife senses something fishy about his story, but being a supportive wife, she follows his instructions to the letter. A week later, he returns home, looking a bit worn out, but pleased with himself. Eagerly, the wife asks him about the trip, if he caught anything exciting, and how it went. He replies, "Yes, we caught lots of salmon, bluegill, and even a few swordfish. But why didn't you pack my blue silk pajamas?" With a sly smile, the wife answers, "I did. They're in your fishing box." Sad Dashamlov. John was a salesperson's dream when it came to quirky gadgets, and his wife Marcia had long since given up trying to change him. One day, he came home with a peculiar new purchase, a robot he claimed was a lie detector. That afternoon, around 5:30, their 11-year-old son Tommy returned home over 2 hours late. "Where have you been?" John asked. "Several of us went to the library to work on an extra credit project," Tommy replied. Suddenly, the robot waddled over and slapped Tommy, sending him crashing to the floor. "Son," John said, "this robot is a lie detector. Now, where were you really after school?" "We went to Bobby's house and watched a movie," Tommy admitted. "What did you watch?" Marcia inquired. "The 10 Commandments," Tommy replied. The robot delivered another slap, knocking him out of his chair again. With a quivering lip, Tommy stood up and confessed, "I'm sorry I lied. We really watched a tape called Sex Queen." "I'm ashamed of you, son," John said. "When I was your age, I never lied to my parents." At that moment, the robot turned and whacked John hard, nearly sending him flying from his seat. Marcia burst into laughter, almost in tears. "Oh boy, did you ask for that? You can't be too mad at Tommy. After all, he is your son." Just then, the robot pivoted to Marcia and knocked her out of her chair, too. Yet a nursing assistant, a floor nurse, and a charge nurse from a small nursing home were taking their lunch break in the break room. Suddenly, a woman dressed in silk scarves and sparkling jewelry walked in. "I am Gina the Great," she announced proudly. "I am so pleased with the way you've taken care of my aunt that I will grant you each one wish." With a wave of her hand and a puff of smoke, the room filled with flowers, fruit, and bottles of champagne, proving she really had the power. The nurses quickly argued over who would get the first wish. The nursing assistant jumped in. "I wish I were on a tropical beach, with handsome men feeding me fruit and tending to my every need." With a flash and a puff of smoke, she was gone. Next, the floor nurse spoke up. "I wish I were rich, retired, and living in a luxury ski chalet with well-groomed men serving me cocoa and pastries." Another puff of smoke, and she vanished. Finally, Gina turned to the charge nurse. "And you? What is your wish?" The charge nurse smiled and said, "I want those two back on the floor after lunch break." 9. My neighbor found out her dog was having trouble hearing, so she took it to the vet. The vet examined the dog and found the issue was hair blocking its ears. He cleaned them out, and suddenly the dog could hear just fine. He told her, "If you want to keep this from happening again, just use some Imac hair remover and rub it in its ears once a month." So, she heads to the pharmacy to buy some Imac. At the counter, the pharmacist says, "If you're using this under your arms, avoid deodorant for a few days." The woman shakes her head. I'm not using it under my arms. The pharmacist nods. If it's for your legs, don't shave for a couple of days. She replies, I'm not using it on my legs either. If you must know, it's for my schnauzer. The pharmacist pauses, then leans in and says, in that case, stay off your bicycle for a week. But a city lawyer went duck hunting in the countryside and shot a duck. The bird fell into a field owned by a local farmer. As the lawyer walked over to retrieve it, the farmer approached on his tractor and asked, What are you doing here? The lawyer replied, I shot this duck and I'm here to pick it up. The farmer crossed his arms and said, This is my land, so you can't take that duck. The lawyer smirked and replied, I'm a top lawyer back in the city. If you don't let me get that duck, I'll take you to court. The farmer shrugged and said, Out here, we settle things with a local tradition called the 3 kicks. Curious, the lawyer asked, What's the 3 kicks? The farmer explained, I kick you 3 times, then you kick me 3 times. We go back and forth until one of us gives up. The lawyer thought he could handle the older farmer, so he agreed. The farmer slowly stepped down from his tractor and gave the lawyer a solid kick in the shins, followed by a second one to the gut, dropping him to his knees. For the final kick, he aimed right at the lawyer's shoulder, knocking him flat. The lawyer struggled to his feet, dusted himself off and said, All right, old man, now it's my turn. The farmer smiled and said, Nah, you can keep the duck. But then under, 2 men were sitting next to each other at O'Malley's pub in Boston. After a while, one man turns to the other and says, I can't help but think, from listening to you, that you're from Scotland? The other man replies proudly, Aye, that I am. The first man grins. So am I. And where in Scotland might you be from? The other responds, I'm from Edinburgh, I am. The first man's eyes widen. Well, would you look at that? I'm from Edinburgh too. What neighborhood did you live in back in Edinburgh? The other man says, A charming little spot, Rose Street, right in the heart of town. The first man can hardly believe it. Saints above, it's a small world. I lived on Rose Street too. And which school did you attend? The other man replies, I went to St. Andrews naturally. The first man gets even more excited. Unbelievable. I went to St. Andrews as well. Tell me, what year did you graduate? The other thinks for a moment and says, Let's see, I graduated in 1975. The first man exclaims, This is amazing. I graduated from St. Andrews in 1975 too. Can you believe the odds of us meeting here tonight? Banirande. A priest, nearing the end of his mission in the jungle, realizes he never taught the native tribe English. Determined to leave them with something, he takes the chief for a walk through the forest. He points to a tree and says, This is a tree. The chief nods and replies, Tree. Encouraged, the priest points to a rock and declares, This is a rock. The chief again responds, Rock. The priest is thrilled, feeling his teaching is finally paying off. Suddenly, they hear rustling in the bushes. Curiosity piqued, they peek over and see a couple of natives engaged in a rather intimate moment. Flustered, the priest blurts out, That's a man riding a bike! Without missing a beat, the chief pulls out his blowgun and shoots the couple. Shocked, the priest exclaims, How could you do that? I've spent years teaching you about kindness and civilization. The chief looks at him and calmly replies, My bike. Padimundra. A couple in their 80s had been struggling with their memories, so they decided to visit the doctor for a checkup. The doctor reassured them that physically they were fine, but suggested they start writing things down to help with their memory. Later that night, while watching TV, the husband got up from his chair. His wife asked, "Where are you going?" "To the kitchen for a drink," he replied. "Will you get me a piece of cake?" she asked. "Sure," he said. She gently reminded him, "Don't you think you should write it down so you don't forget?" "Nah, I can remember that," he insisted. "Okay, but I'd like some strawberries on top. You'd better jot that down. I know you'll forget." "I can remember you want cake with strawberries," he said confidently. "Oh, and I want whipped cream on top too. You really should write that down because I know you'll forget." Getting a bit irritated, he snapped, "I don't need to write it down. Cake with strawberries and whipped cream." With that, he grumbled into the kitchen. About 30 minutes later, he returned with a plate of bacon and eggs. She stared at it for a moment and exclaimed, "Where's my toast?"